Do
we have it out?
I can't. No one's played it yet.
Ah, that could be a problem.
Probably plug it in.
So, you want to do a couple things that you want to be aware of. This is actually a 7-voice synthesizer, right? So, voltage controlled oscillator, voltage controlled oscillator, voltage controlled oscillator, voltage controlled oscillator, voltage controlled oscillator. So that's 5. There are 2 more which are here. Right? These are not as extensive as those. Right? Then you have a dual mode mixer. Right? The out 1 and 2, as it's labeled here, and the out 3 and 4 are wired behind to go to the patch bay, right? And 1 and 2 is normaled to channels 3 and 4 on the console, if I remember correctly.
What do you mean by normal?
In other words, the output from here goes to the top of one of the patch bays, and that automatically is connected to the bottom of the patch bay, and the other end of the wire that's connected on the back of the bottom of the patch bay goes into input 3 and 4 of the mixing console. So you don't have to connect anything. Normal is, I'm going to design the studio so that when there are no cables in the patch bay, it is the way you use it most commonly. If you want to do something different, then you have to use patch cords and go in and patch things.
Gotcha.
Right? So that's desirable, because otherwise every time you go to use the studio, you got to set it up. Right? So you get it set up so that you have as much functionality as you possibly can. Right? So these guys, as I said, automatically go there. You don't need to put a jack into here. If you do, it's going to go directly over there, and then you won't have any control, so you're defeating the purpose of this module. Right? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that everything is normaled, and that means everything is zeroed out. Right? So 0, 0, 0, 0. Here, 0 is in the middle. 0 is in the middle. Right? So I'm going to take a sine wave, and I'm going to plug it into input number 1. And I'm going to bring up level number 1, and I should hear something. Do I see a signal?
Is left right up? Like the mains?
Yeah, it's on left and right.
No, the mains faders of them.
Yeah, they're out.
Well, but I should see something on the channel itself.
You're not getting anything on the...
Okay,
you're getting
so,
a little bit. We just got a blip.
Yeah, so look up at the top. If you move to your right a little bit so I can see. Good, so if you look up at the top, your trims are way low.
The
The 2 red ones?
Yeah.
Bring those up so that they're at like 11 o'clock.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, why don't you
Or what?
up on the black box above your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you bring that up to 12 o'clock? And now if you move your body so I can see what's happening on the meters. Okay, that looks okay. So here I am, I've got a tone. So the way that these work is I have a coarse and a fine tune. So the fine allows me to get a really fine adjustment. The coarse,
That's a lot.
right, gives me a very broad range. If you look back over here, you see the signal on the oscilloscope, right? And as we get higher in pitch, things get closer together left and right, right? But as I change the intensity here on the mixer, that signal gets taller or shorter, right? So this is intensity, this is frequency, right? The other thing I should do with the oscilloscope, if I'm going to use it for any real purpose, is, excuse me, I want to see it's on channel 1, and I want to go to ground, and I want to position here. I want to make sure that my focus is good. That the best way to do that is to look at the text and get it so the text is readable. And then I want the intensity. I don't really need it to be very intense. I'll just burn out the tube, right? So I can leave that kind of low. And then when I take the ground off, I'll see my signal. I could use a little more intensity. There we go, right? Because there's a light right over it, so I guess I'll bring it up a little more. So now, if I go and get a frequency, and I see that I have a frequency of 103 cycles per second. So I'm going to use my fine tune to bring that down a little bit. Okay, you also notice that there's a red light blinking here, which says gate. So what that is it is actually looking and measuring the frequency whenever the gate is open, right? So the settings that you need to pay attention to here are, you want it to be on 1S, which is once a second, right? And everything else, you want this to be on external, which means that has to be pushed in, and then everything else can be out, right? It doesn't make any difference what you have in terms of any of the other settings. You're just using it as a counter. It will also put out a frequency, but we don't want that right now. So just 1S and external. And so now I see I'm back up to 103.
Why does that happen?
Well, because things drift. Because even though this is more stable than that, nothing's perfect.
That makes sense.
Okay, so I have this, and give me some more volume over there. Yeah, up top, up
This
top.
again?
Yeah. And actually, let's see what this other setting is. You can take a few back.
Okay.
So remember that we have a number of places where we have signal. We have signal here, right? Signal comes through here, and then through here. All of those are adjustment places for level. Okay, so I have this at almost 100. And what I want to do now is I want to actually make it so the amplitude of that is louder. So I'm going to bring this up so that it is actually so if you give me a little bit more from the oscilloscope, not yellow,
Okay.
right one. Okay, good. So now you see that I'm 1, 2, 3 blocks below center and 3 blocks above. So I'm going to unplug that. That's my number 1. And then I'm going to take another and I'm going to plug into number 2, and I should be okay, so this is 200 cycles per second. Well, if I put 1 and 2 together, what do I get?
It's an octave.
Yeah, but I get a little beat tone because they're not exactly together.
Right.
Right.
It's 205 or 101.
So one of the things I could do is go back here and say, well, that was at 3 intensity, so I want this to be basically at 1.5 intensity. So I'm going to lower that just a hair, and then I'm going to put 1 and 2 back in again. And I wonder, is there any way that I can get these so that they're actually in sync? What if I do this? Does that help? One is hard and one is soft. They're much more stable now. But still not exactly right. I can't get down any lower with that one, so let me come up a little with this one.
Yeah. That's about.
Right, so who was the guy that said you can create any sound by just using sine waves in the right frequency, amplitude, and phase relationship? Fourier. Did you guys have fundamentals already?
Not.
No
Apparently,
fundamentals? Ah,
We haven't learned that yet.
okay, well they should, that's early on, they should give you that. Anyway, who's teaching fundamentals this semester?
One.
Losada.
One.
One.
Yeah.
Losada.
Losada, yeah.
Okay. There's 2. What if I add a third sine wave? I'm going to pull those 2 out and just work with this third one. And now I want that to be at, again, the right intensity relationship, so it should be like 3/4. And I want it to be the correct frequency, so it should be, let's see, 100, 200, 300. Roughly. I think the other ones went up a little bit. So here's my original signal. Here's my
Second. Nice.
right? So I can add these guys together, and I wind up, if I continue and I get the phase relationship correct, the intensity relationship correct, as well as the frequency relationship correct, I can actually create another waveform, a completely different waveform. And what waveform would that be? Depends on which ones I put in.
So you can make
Right.
anything, technically, right?
So you could make anything, yes. And if it's not a pure tone, an electronic sound, it's much more complex to try and recreate it.
Right.
So here's a little quiz for you guys. I want everybody to close your eyes and face that way. And for you guys.